Hello and welcome back to our decomp tutorial series. Today we are going to be talking about adding items to the game. So this is a little bit of a complicated topic depending on, how in-depth we get into adding items, because adding specific items is where a lot of the problem lies in adding items, not necessarily adding an item itself. Adding an item can be kind of easy, but adding a specific item with a complicated use case can be very complex. If you've seen any of my videos, all of my Zelda items are just normal Pokemon items, or just key items, and all of those are far from simple. But we are going to be going over just a basic Vial. I threw this together. The code that actually does the Vial healing isn't exactly the greatest, but it works, it's functional, and we're going to use it as an example to talk about adding items into the game. It's as simple as that. So to start with, we need a constant for our item. Wherever we are in the code, we are defining our item in a list of arrays, and we need a position in that array for our item at the end. So we go to include constants items.h, and then we go down, scroll down to the very bottom, all the way down, well, not the very bottom, but scroll down to the bottom of the list of the item defines, the item constants, and we are just going to add an extra line, create our item at the next value in the list, and then we are going to change the items count to match the one more than our last item. So we're adding this Vial item here, so I added this define for it, and I changed the items count to 378 instead of 377. Pretty simple. Now the next big thing is this is the list in source data items.h that has the actual item struct g items that stores all of our item data, basically. When the game is trying to figure out what to do with an item, it goes into this g item struct, it indexes it by the number we just gave it, and then it asks for a specific field. So it's like, well, give me the function that goes with this item in this position in the array, and then I'm going to try to run it. Some of the times it's item use out of battle, cannot use, so that means you can't run it if you're out of the battle and trying to use it, or that's for the field use func, which is the function to use when the item is being used from the field. The battle use function is the function to use when the item is used from a battle. The name obviously is the name of the item. The item ID is a repeat of the define for the item. It is just another way of being able to access the item data, the define for the position in the array. The price is how much it costs in a Pokemart. If it is 0, it cannot be bought or sold. So if you wanted Master Balls to be able to be bought, you would need to put it to a 1 instead of a 0 so that you can actually buy them. The description, well, we might as well scroll down to the bottom while we're talking about this. So we are just going to take the last item, copy and paste it right here for a second, our item, it just needs a new position in the array. So we're going to copy the last item, paste it, and we're going to start changing it. So we give it our define, item Pokevial. We give it our name, Pokevial. We give it our item ID, item Pokevial. We give it a price, 0. We don't want this to be bought or sold. It is it's a key item. It heals your player automatically. We don't want it to, we're not buying it from a Pokemart or anything. And then we give it a description. So these descriptions are created in source data text item descriptions.h. And we don't need a second define for this. We just need this right here. So we just copy one of these and just give it a little bit of a description. This is the description that is going to show in the bag when you are about to use an item from the bag. So the importance, you don't really need to worry about that. Just leave it set to 1. The registerability, I think it might actually be unused. I don't know if it actually matters, but since we're letting this item be registered, we're going to put it to true anyway. The pocket, we want this in the key items pocket for obvious reasons. The type is item use bag menu. Now this can change depending on what the item is. So here we have the item use mail for the mail, which makes it has obvious item use party menu, an item that can be used from the like in the party menu. Like you actually, when the item is used, it is being called from the party menu instead of from the bag. An item use bag is just a item that when you click it in the bag, it is being used. Whereas the party menu items take you back to the party and then you use it on a Pokemon. The mail obviously operates differently as well. So if we scroll back down to the bottom, the last thing, and this is different, the field use or the battle use func is the function that we are going to call when you press use item, or if you register it and then you press select on the in the overworld. This is the function that is going to be called for a field use func. Or if it's a battle item and it's a battle use func, it's going to be called when you use it in battle. So before we get into that though, we're going to briefly, one more array that we have to go in, source data item icon table.h. This is the icon for your item, the picture, the graphic. So we just scroll down to the bottom, we add a new index for our Vial. We give it item Vial is equal to, and then here, this is obviously going to be different for you. I didn't want to add a new picture for this, so I just took the flute, the blue flute icon and palette, because it kind of looks like a Vial, and I'm lazy. So if you are trying to add your own picture and palette, I'm sure you're going to want to, you need to go to the graphics, items, icons, and you need to save your image. It needs to be, the 4-bit per pixel, 16-bit colors, only 16 colors. The 0th bit or the 0th color is the transparent color, all that jazz. These item icons are 24 by 24 pixels wide. It needs to be saved in this folder as a PNG, and then you need to export its palette. You can watch the Graphics 101 video if you need help with that in the icon palettes folder. So we save the icon in the icons folder, and we save the palette in the palettes folder. And then we need to actually create the variables that are storing the data for the icon itself and the palette. So we are going to go to include graphics.h g items icon flute, and here we are going to declare the variables that are going to be holding these externs that are U32-bit arrays. So it's just an unsigned 32-bit array to hold the data for our images. Now we have to create one for the icon, and we have to create one for the palette. These are the ones that are used for what I am doing, but you create yours, name them whatever you want to. Then from there, we're going to source data graphics items.h, and then all we need to do is we need to basically copy one of the icon and one of the palette lines, and add your file name to the path. So, and then add your variable name to the front. So if we just copy and pasted this, and then add your new name for your icon, the new name for your palette, and then change this to be your icon name. Make sure the .4 BPP is the picture, this is not the palette. The palette one is the .gba pal. So this one, again, icon palettes, just change this to be whatever your palette name is. So you have your palette and your icon and your palette, and then you save them in the icon table here, and then you should have a new image for your item, a new image with a new palette. It should work fine. It's not any more complicated than that. You just save the picture and the palette in this file here, and then you save you add them both in the index for the Vial or whatever your item is. You add them in the item icon table so that the game knows where to look for the picture and the palette. Otherwise, it will probably just pull some junk data and it'll look like a little bit of a mess. So now that we have talked about all the, background stuff that is just dependent on that's the any item stuff. For the most part, I mean, a little bit of what we're going to get into is every item, but all of that stuff, that's what you're always going to have to do. You're always going to need to create the define in this list, and create the array entry for the item, and you're going to need to add the item icon if you want it to not look like a mess, and a description if you want it to not display gibberish. So like those are things you always need to do. Now when it comes to the actual function for the item, things get a little bit more complicated. If you just want the item to exist in your inventory and have other things in the game check to see if it's in your inventory and then do things based on that, you're in luck. That's one of the easiest items you can do. You can just give it, you can't use it out of battle, and then you just have this map and you can't use it. An NPC will check for it later using one of the is in inventory checks that you can call from your scripts. I forget what the macro is for that. It doesn't matter. But anyway, if you want it to actually have a function though, like we do, we want it to heal our entire party at any point in the overworld. We have to add a call for it, a function. In this case, a field use func instead of a battle use func. Now, I'm not going to go over the battle use funcs because I have not touched any of the battle stuff pretty much at all, so I'm not even going to pretend to know how to deal with it. But for the field use func, I've done a few of them, and this one is a little bit of a mess, but we're going to go over it anyway. Some of this stuff is a little redundant, as I will probably point out, but it is the way it is because it is how I wrote it. So to start with, we are going to go into itemuse.c, source itemuse.c. Now this is where we're going to put the actual code for our item use out of battle pokevial. So that's this function here, item use out of battle pokevial. But we also have to declare it in include itemuse.h so that we can call it from other functions, like inside of the array we can have it stored there. So here we just give it a name so that we can then define it actually in the code. And in this case we're going to be using a callback here separately, and we also have to define this up at the top. I'm going to go over that now so I don't have to bring it up later, but it is also needs to be, I mean, I don't know that it really needed to be there, but we could have just moved it up above. It doesn't matter. Anyway, onward. So I have the main bit of the actual healing. I wanted to display a message. I didn't want to deal with any of the C message displaying. It's actually really easy, but I'm kind of lazy, and this is technically faster for me since I didn't have to look into 2 minutes of how to display the code in C. So anyway, I just called the heal player party from a script, and then displayed this message box, pokevial text, message box default, pokevial text, your party was magically cured. So this is just a short script I added to Pokemon Center nurse.inc. It doesn't really matter where you add it. You can create a new file. You can add it to any file. Just give it the global context. I don't even think you need to give it the global context, to be honest. I'm pretty sure it will work no matter what. But the special heal player party handles the healing the player. It's actually used in here. If we scroll up, we can see it. It's what the Poke Center nurse normally uses to heal your party. That's what it does. It heals the party, and then we display a message, and then we release all, and we end. That's it. The script is super simple. You could give it to an NPC, and it would do the same thing. You could give it to a statue, it would do the same thing. This is just your basic old, we've already covered it before, healing script. But we are calling it from the item, which is what gets a little bit more complicated. So here we have our extern U8 pokevial heal script. This is just an extern variable that lets us save the pointer to the heal script from our C code. It lets so that we can access it from our C code. So it takes this heal script and it saves it into this extern so that we can access it. It saves the pointer to it. So now that we have that saved, we can start working on our code. So we have our item use out of battle pokevial. So this is what is called when we press OK in the bag or on the field, this is called. Now, because it's happening in the bag or in the field, I'm doing two different things depending on whether or not it's being used as a registered item in the field or being used from the bag. Now, I'm pretty sure this code here, in some form or way, completely invalidates this as entirely unnecessary. I think it might handle it automatically, but I separated them and did it twice, and there's the only particular reason why is because I was doing it quickly. It's not really important how this works though, so my terrible coding habits aren't really the focus. So to start with, item use on field callback. So this is a callback to be saved. We're saving a callback to it. This stores the callback that is going to be used when we're on the field. When we back out of, when the bag is closed, because this is when we're in bag. This is in bag, but at some point the bag has to be closed, right? We want the bag to close when we use this. We don't just want it to happen automatically. We want the bag to close, the party heals, and then we display text. So we're saving this Vial callback here, which is going to actually set up the script. We're saving it into this item use on field. We also do it here in the else as well. So we're saving this item use on field callback. We are taking the field callback, we are setting it to field use item on field. Now this is a common callback. You can see in this berry one, it's used here. This is actually very similar to the berry callback here. This is all the same here. When we're using the berry on the field, we save the G field callback. This is our global field callback. When we go to the field, when we CB2 return to field, this is used all the time when we're exiting a bag or the start menu or the party menu or a bunch of different things, the PC, we return back to the field using this CB2 return to field. It handles, bringing all the sprites back in, everything like that. When CB2 return to field is finished with its setup portion, it then runs the G field callback if it has one. That's the first thing that it does when it can. When we're finally back in the field, it will run that callback. So if we want to attach code to run after we are exiting the bag and back in the field, then this is where we want to put it. So we are giving it this standard field CB use item on field, which is going to then take this this callback here, this item use on field callback, and this is going to run this once we get back onto the field from here. It's a little bit complicated, but that is how it is generally working. So the next line, gbag menu, new screen callback equals CB2 return to field. This is basically just telling the bag that we're currently in at this moment. It's saying, goodbye bag. We are setting our new callback to return to field, and then we are starting the task fade and close bag menu. So this just exits the bag, and then it's setting this callback here, this Vial, as the next thing to run once we're back in the field. Now, this else block, if we are not using a registered, if we are using or not using a registered item, if we are using a registered item, we are just going to set the item to be used, and then we're going to set up item use on field callback. Now this is just going to automatically call. We probably don't even need to do it this way. We can probably just call it directly, but it doesn't matter. I'm pretty sure I just copied some code somewhat in some way or another to have this work. Again, it's more than likely redundant, but the point is not the code itself. We are just going to set up the item use for this callback so that when we so that the next thing that just gets run is this item use callback Vial function. And all this does is it lock player field control, script context, setup script, Vial heal script, and it destroys the task. So it just takes all this out of the the list of things that are running at the time for the game. We've already covered tasks if you want to watch that video. So all this script context setup script does is it just runs the script Vial heal script. So that is the end of our functionality for this item. You can look through this file to look at the functionality of all of these different items. There are a lot of different things going on for these items, especially some of the more complicated ones, like the callback for the bike. We have to change our avatar state for our characters, so that it swaps out the event object graphics that is used for our character and replaces it with a different one. Things like that. It also sets the avatar state. Well, that's what I just said. It sets the state so that it also is changing the movement functions and the animations, and that is obviously a little bit of an ordeal to get around. Some of my items for my Zelda game do the same thing. They change the avatar state so that I can have my bow and arrows or my push-pull blocks, which added 8 new movement actions. But anyway, we have a short demonstration of our new item. We tackle twice. So now our Mudkip, we have this Vial here. Vial restores party. Fade and closes background menu, and then it sets up the script. Now if I set it to register, and then I back out and I hit the register button, same thing, just automatically runs the script. And as you can see, we are healed. There's nothing to it. Well, there can be a lot to it if your item is complicated, but for this item, it is very simple. That is items. I'm going to wrap up the video because there's not much else to talk about. If you have any questions or comments, make sure to leave them below or in the Discord. Otherwise, I will see you on the next one.